And we are live. Um, there's actually another box that's not here yet that will come in. The Oklahoma people, they're a little bit late to the party fashionably. But I do want to actually welcome everybody to our first panel of the workshop, which will have several people who have been doing domains at their various institutions for several years now, talking about some of the examples and possibilities of domain of one's own. And so this is kind of a fun session. We've had it previously, and the cool part about it is you get to hear from admins and the cool stuff happening at their schools rather than like the nitty gritty of WHMCS and WHM. So it's good to break it up. So with us, we have Amanda McAndrew and Caroline Sigurdsson, both coming from University of Colorado at Boulder. We have John and Keegan, our fashionably latecomers from the University of Oklahoma. And we have, who will be starting us off, Tim Clark from Muhlenberg College. And all of these folks have been doing amazing things, many for many years. So please, let's start that. Tim, take it away.
All right, thanks. Thanks for having me. So it's a really interesting question, what's possible. I just wanted to start by stating something obvious. Your institutional Berg build, or your institutional domain of one's own, we happen to call ours Berg Builds Domains, has its own cPanel. And with its own cPanel, that means it has its own terminal. And with its own terminal, whether you SSH in or just use the web interface, you can really get into lots of interesting trouble. And I just wanted to point out one thing that's nightly added to our home directory for our main Berg Builds account. We have this Muhlenberg installs.json file, which allowed me, by doing some sort of JSON to CSV and CSV to JSON conversions, start messing around in Google Sheets. And that brought me to building a community site that is not anything through the installatron. It's basically just an HTML5 up template. If you're not familiar with HTML5 up, you should check them out. There's lots of really beautiful, responsive templates to start with. And then I used a JavaScript, I guess, trick or tool that allowed me to do some sort of sorting and faceting and things like that. And I built a community site because the one thing that I was hearing from students as I'd go into classrooms was they wanted to see what other students were doing. They wanted to get their own ideas going by looking at other sort of high quality examples of student work. And that's a pretty sound sort of pedagogical practice. And I wanted to make that possible. So a couple times a year, I try to go to that Muhlenberg installs.json file. I pull that file. There's another one that shows me how recently someone has updated or logged into their Berg Builds account. And I can crosswalk those two to look at the most sort of recent activity first. And budget my time as far as which of these sites I want to evaluate. Because the one thing I haven't been able to automate is how to apply these categories or how to apply these facets to student work. Sometimes they make it really easy for me because they'll put up that it's a portfolio in the title. But sometimes I want to get in there and actually read and sort of spend a little bit of time with the student sites to make sure that I assign, for instance, are they blogging? If they are, I want to make sure that I catch the blogs, that sort of thing. So a lot of this is really, I'm really glad that I'm here with the folks that I'm here with, because a lot of what we're doing at Muhlenberg, we've really just borrowed from other places. There has been a spotlight of sort of high quality work happening on OU Creates for a long time. They also have something called the Creaties. We have something similar. We call them the MBs, and we make awards every year. I walk around campus in a bee costume to try and drum up interest and support in the MBs, and we also use the Berg Builds community site as the place to start for people who want to make nominations. We encourage self-nominations for IMBYs. We think that's great when folks are proud of the work that they do, but we also ask for nominations from faculty and staff and our own digital learning assistants who are Muhlenberg students who help with all of our digital projects. They do that as well. So, I mean, basically, you can do your own sort of custom PHP development. I'm really excited to talk later on during the workshop about the splots and about True Collector and how we might be able to sort of customize it. Because if you look at the True Collector splot, it does a lot of what that community site I built from scratch does. And it has the added advantage of having a MySQL database in the back end. So maybe I can get away from doing all of this stuff on Google Sheets. And I can just have a connector, some sort of script that I might write, a cron job or something that I might develop myself that looks at this Muhlenberg installs.json file, uses a sort of connector to write all of the accounts into a table in WordPress. I could then have the True Collector splot as sort of the public layer of that, and I could do a lot of that management right from within a WordPress installation. So that's my dream for the summer. Right now, if you go to our Bergbuilds community, it says that we're making some changes. I set up a sort of quick example today. This is the URL here. If you just go to community.bergbuilds.domain/roadshow, you should see what I'm showing. And yeah, that's it for me. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. And if you really want to get into the guts of things, I'm happy to share the code and all that kind of stuff. Although, you know, I'm not the best programmer, so I'm a little self-conscious, but for this group, I'd be happy to share.
But I have to say, Tim, I mean, one of the things that's been super cool is, you know, you've been doing this stuff. I know John Stewart, Tom Woodward is interested in this stuff. Marie at Georgetown has been working with some version of this. And I know a lot has been circulating around. So hopefully one of the things that can come out of this workshop is us putting a little bit more concerted effort in how we can support that too on our side. So I love to see this. I can never see your community site enough. And I think one of the reasons why we invited you, as well as Amanda and Carolyn from UC Boulder, is that they've done a really great job of also bringing community in and kind of framing their site in a very powerful way. So Tim, thank you. And Caroline and Amanda, please take it away. How about that for a segue? God, I should be a talk show host. Damn.
Totally should be. Thank you. Yeah, we're very happy to be here. I'm Carolyn Sinkinson, and I'm here with my colleague, Amanda McAndrew, as Jim said, from CU Boulder. So thanks for having us. And as Tim said, we learned a great deal from both Tim, Keegan, and John as we developed our own work with Reclaim Hosting. So a big thanks to them, and encourage you all to really ask questions of them. But I wanted to start kind of by saying that Amanda and I have worked together over the years. I'm very fortunate to be able to work with Amanda over the years in lots of different ways to invite faculty and students to think and dwell in conversation about the complexities of networked information cultures. And we've done a lot of things together, like workshops and seminars and other activities that really have drawn us to three concepts that I wanted to kind of frame our talk with you with. And those concepts are, the first being literacies and information literacies in particular. The second being asking about learning design. And we do that through thinking about open pedagogical practices. And the third being the space. And for us, that space is what we call Bus Create. And that's our domain of one's own instance at CU Boulder. We started working with Reclaim Hosting in, I think it was 2018, right, Amanda?
I think so. Although we had been dreaming about it for years before that.
Years and years, yeah. But so around that time, we started working on this project, and it has been funded by Amanda's department, which is called Asset, and they support the College of Arts and Sciences. And as we launched the program, it was really important to us to think about how do we cultivate a community around the project. And as Tim was saying, it like the the real benefit in seeing possibility through other people's examples and other people's experiences, we felt would be paramount in whether or not our project was a success. So that's what we wanted to talk with you about today, is to share a few examples of how we went about doing that, which might be useful to you as you are starting your own. And we'll talk a bit about a faculty community of practice that we did. Another approach we took was through faculty consultations in the spirit of open pedagogy. A third example was student-targeted workshops. And the fourth example is our community showcase site that really was inspired by Tim's site that he just shared. So I'm going to share my screen now. And the first thing that I will show you is this site. Is a site that we built to support a faculty community of practice. And we invited a faculty cohort to join us over a series of meetings and to join us in the spirit themselves acting as learners with Buffs Create. And we really wanted them to come in with a sense of play and experimentation. And through this community of practice, we invited them to think about Buffs Create, first of all, as kind of a concept and what we called a possibility space, which is a term we borrowed from Alan Levine, who many of you may know. But we invited them to think about Buffs Create as a place of exploration, to think about digital agency, literacies, criticality. We also shared with them a bit of the history of domains of one's own and did some shared readings and things with them through that initial workshop. And then secondly, we moved with them to being creators themselves with Buffs Create. So obviously we introduced them to some of the technical aspects of using domain of one's own, but we also asked them to think about what it means to craft a digital identity and what kind of questions they would hope their own students were asking as they thought about a digital space and a kind of digital presence they'd want to curate. And then finally, and I think you all are talking about this later this afternoon, which I was excited to see, we also introduced them to what we referred to as some tiny teaching tools. And many of those were the splots, things like True Collector and True Writer, and other ways that they might imagine the possibility of Buffs Create as a pedagogical tool in their classrooms. So this was an example of us creating community with faculty. The next example, I'll hand off to Amanda.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that the splots have been a really good starting point for our faculty. I think they really resonated with the idea of splots that students could contribute to a course site without having to log in or, it's just a very simple entry point. And so that got a lot of folks just a good place for them to start imagining what they could do in their classrooms. So this site that we're showing here is from a course on environment, media, and society students. And this instructor has loved the splots. That's his second class that he has been working with those. And students just shared their blogs and commentary on various topics that are in creative media advocacy. So that is one. Another one that we were really excited about is an English professor who had students do annotations of various Renaissance writing. So one of the cool things that, so it's still a splot, but she was able to use the footnote feature to do the annotations, and she presented at a conference on this. So we were super excited that she, was sharing this beyond the campus and wider audiences for us. And then the third one is in a performance artist class, and so these students all recorded videos of various little exercises that they could do to build community when they are out doing like social justice work. And so it was really fun that there was a way for them to share something beyond writing, that they were able to share their videos. So And that one has gotten that one really gets people excited, I think, when we show that one to other faculty. And then let's see, lastly, I just wanted to talk about that we often, some things that we do, we did the SIG, but we also, I mention it in course design workshops that I do, and that gets some folks interested. And then we are invited into their classroom to talk about it and help students get started. And so we have this presentation on portfolios that we always do in the classroom, and talk about why it's important to have a portfolio, how you can share a bit more about your particular story beyond the typical resume or cover letter or LinkedIn profile that everybody just looks the same. Here's a way for you to really showcase and tell your educational story. Is quite a bit of what we're trying to impress upon the students, and why it would be helpful for them to do this. And then we do get into a little bit of the technical piece. Just kind of we don't hold their hands, but we do get them in, explain what a domain is, help them start the domain and install WordPress or one of the other tiny teaching tools like the calling card that Alan Levine has developed as well. And then lastly, just wanted to show you our community showcase site, similar to the OU Creaties. We got the idea from them and from Berg Builds. And we more or less just kind of scour the site for, when we go into a class, we check back in a week or so to see who's done what, and ask if we can feature them on the site. My camera went out.
Nope, that was mine. But
okay. And yeah, but that's pretty much it. Just, we scour the site. We have tried a little bit of like awards or enter your site to win a gift card. And so, that's worked a little bit, not quite as much as we had hoped, but that's about where we're at with Let's Create.
I tell you, one of the cool things, and thank you both, Amanda and Caroline, I always dig seeing your examples, like that annotation one. That's new to me. And the one that with the drama and with the doing the social justice work out in the community. I know that Alan Levine was talking about another Splot he maybe wants to make an installer for called the Splot Box, which would actually enable video pretty cleanly from like Internet Archive, YouTube, Vimeo. It's kind of an interesting one. So there could be more coming that might really fit that example, because I do think these days video is very compelling.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to share this anecdote and then hopefully you all can explain on it. So I remember like Reclaim, we're doing our thing, answering tickets, doing whatever we do, playing video games. And then someone said in Slack, like, have you seen Buffs Create? I was like, what? And like, we all went to your site and we were like, oh, wait, like they totally did a makeover. And like they never reached out to us. It was completely independent. So can you talk a little bit about like your site makeover and what inspired it and how you did it?
For the community site?
Exactly. Yeah. In general, it just looks completely new.
Yeah. I think I don't know. We just had a graphic designer on our staff, and I asked her if she could, kind of take our concept and, come up with some, those three, the support site and the community site, and try to make something that was somewhat cohesive with the computer design. But then on the support site, we also we kind of borrowed what we thought was your with the boxes, that particular layout.
Yeah.
So,
and it works.
I do really have a graduate assistant that works with us, and so she loves digging in and figuring out how to do this stuff. So she was a big part of this as well.
And the thing that I think struck us was, we provide, and this goes to some of the earlier discussions today, we provide Enfold and we provide a theme. But I do think at the point, and Oklahoma and Muhlenberg were early in this as well as you all, it's like taking that and then molding it to really reflect the kind of, identity of the program at your school. And a question came up, and it's a really interesting one in the chat, is like, where do all of these different domain of one's own instances live? Like, for example, Buff Create. You talked about your 2 different departments. Can you talk a little bit about where you live and who it serves?
Yes. So the organization that I work in is called ASSET, and that's Arts and Sciences Support of Education Through Technology. Sorry. And so we only serve the College of Arts and Sciences, but I knew that this was so focused on digital identity, and I really wanted to do so much more than just have a website or have a portfolio. And so I knew that was something that Carolyn was really passionate about. And she, like Carolyn said, we've been working together for years, and we just dreamed about having this site. So she and I partnered on proposing this to our group, and they went for it for ASSET. But we are in the process of pitching the whole project for the campus. And so we hope that, so right now, Carolyn and I pretty much manage everything, the back end, and with the grad assistant, the back end, the outreach, the training, everything. So, but what we're hoping in the next year is to get OIT, our Office of Information Technology, on board to help do some of the back end support, while Carolyn and I would still do more of the outreach and the training and the purpose and the fun part, the whole possibility part for the campus.
Can I ask you a question while you both are here? Is like, how has it been in terms of, so you two manage it and you're managing domain of one's own. So you're down in the basement somewhere with your Mountain Dew, green screen, right? With the matrix flowing. Like, how has it been managing it? Because I'm sure it's not the only thing you do. And for other new folks who are coming and administrators, like, that's one of the questions they'll have for us. So what's your experience been like?
Well, I think,
yeah, you go ahead, Carol.
I'll just say that we did a road show like this with you all. We, I think bothered Jim and Lauren and the other great support at Reclaim Hosting. We also started by reaching out to a number of different institutions to see how they approached it and how they kind of managed that workflow and that back end support. And I think we were both a little nervous at first. I mean, because we do have other jobs as well, but it has been really manageable, especially with the grad students support. And we've been doing a lot of documentation and a lot of thinking and asking questions that we can then use to take to OIT and these other bodies on our campus who might help us to extend it in a fuller and more robust way. We don't usually drink Mountain Dew, and we don't have a green screen. I think maybe that was a mistake, Amanda. I
might have to put that in the budget request.
Yeah, exactly. Like 3 liters of Mountain Dew.
Honestly, I'll say, it is a little bit daunting at first, but we have not really, knock on wood, struggled with much. And if we have questions, Reclaim is right there to help us out. So it really has been, very enjoyable and easier than I expected.
It's really encouraging, though, I mean, on our part, to see admins, and it's hard. I mean, everybody's got a lot to do. It's been a crazy year we're coming out of, hopefully. And I just think that, like, understanding the limits of it and what you can and can't support, and like building a sense of community around it, like you all have by highlighting examples. I mean, your work has been really awesome to watch and to grow, and just the work you both have done. So let's just acknowledge that by Reclaim. It's been I'm a big fan, in other words.
Thank you.
Okay, so now 2 people I'm not really a big fan of, but we're going to have to pull them on anyway. Oh, there they are, John and Keegan. Welcome. The University of Oklahoma, Old Gold. Here's a quick story before we let you guys go, right? Tim and I, domain of one's own, big fan. Like, we had $1,000 left in our bank account. It was June 14, and we're like, oh, that was a great experiment. Now the time to go back to work. And then the University of Oklahoma calls us. Hey, Mark and Adam are like, you know what? We want to do it for all of Oklahoma. And here we are, 8 years later. Big fan. Thank you for making domain of one's own effectively possible. And I'm going to shut up now and let you talk. thank you, Keegan and John from the University of Oklahoma.
Yeah, we're excited to be here. And in thinking about this presentation, I was kind of thinking about the different kind of weird ways that I've been using domain of one's own recently, or I guess in the long term. It's been many years that I've been doing some of these things now. So one of the things that I kind of want to draw your attention to in my good old screen share here is what I'm going to talk about today is actually content within the cPanel. I'm going to spend some time in how I'm using redirects to kind of, to kind of capture different points where I exist across the web and bring them into a space that I have them really so I can remember where they are. That is what it comes down to at the end of the day, is so I can remember what some of these things are. But it's also, there's some utility around it for sharing with others. I've used this trick a few times with conferences and different kinds of things. And really what it comes down to is when I set up redirects for, I'll show you a few examples here. This is one for actually domain 17, where it's just d17 dot and then my domain. And that redirects to the presentation that I gave, which is actually, in this case, was a Canvas course. And then this one was one for domains 19, so it was D19 and then my domain. And this was the code that we were sharing with the folks that were present at the time of getting in there. So honestly, like using that redirect feature within the domain system, I've replaced like my use of anything like Bitly or any of those kinds of services for things that I can remember kind of offhand, and it makes it so much easier for me to just work with and share and know immediately where different kind of resources are across the web. So I've been using it off and on for different capacities for a while, but there's another kind of interesting kind of take on this as well, and this is the idea of taking web tools that aren't necessarily in domains and kind of bringing them into domains itself. What do I mean by that? So this is, so spark.keeganslw.com goes to actually an Adobe Spark website that is kind of branded and hosted in my domain space. And then I've also done it with the Microsoft Sway as well, which is kind of they're very similar tools, but bringing those kind of things in so I can remember like where they are, what they are. And then recently I've had one that is off of our goblin.education website. This one was actually built by a colleague, and so I would remember where it was located. I added the spark.goblin.education to this as well. And this is by our colleague, Maddie Shellgren. It is a beautiful Spark as well. But anyway, so where is this magic? This magic comes, like I said, in a couple of forms. It comes either in the redirect section, or the Sway and the Spark example is actually just a very kind of simple HTML iframe code is all it is. So legitimately all I did was create domains within my domain space, or subdomains in this case, and then in the file explorer go in and add a HTML file that was legitimately this simple. So this is the Spark. When I go to the spark.keeganslw.com, all it loads is an iframe of that original Spark. And I have it where its width is 100% and its max height is set to 2000 pixels. Just so this was kind of just stuff that I play tested over time. And then basically this one tiny little piece of HTML now powers that kind of bringing that content in under my domain, as it were. But the fun thing about it is it makes it accessible to me, and it's easier for me to share with folks. And really, I mean, those are the couple things that in my short time that I wanted to share, because I don't know, weird and kind of quirkier ways of using the domain space.
I gotta say, Keegan, if I'm not muted, and I'm not, but one of the things I dig about that, I know, John, I don't want to steal your thunder here, but I dig the whole idea of these map domains kind of, Whereas like literally like this is your domain where you're featuring different tools, but you're redirecting. And a few people said this in the comments in Discord was, they want to see other uses and cases that are outside WordPress or Scalar and that. And I like that, as you always did with Instructure and Canvas, and you showed at Domain 17, like, the two don't have to be opposite. One makes possible the other. And I just love that. And I always was, my big argument for top level domains for students and faculty was that there's a sense of ownership in those subdomains and a sense of a world that you take with you, no matter the tool. Like you can exchange out WordPress, you can exchange out all those other tools, but still have that URL, that record. So super cool stuff. And it reminds me of the WordPress multi-site domain mapping in really cool ways. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and it's fun because it, like you said, it started as the, being able to label something and capture something as under your kind of domain space, but it's also transformed to me as a memory thing too now.
Yeah,
over time. So it's it brings those two benefits to me at least.
And I love to see the redirects used in a creative way rather than just a we'll be back after these messages, right? It's actually a site. It's super cool.
Yeah. All right. I'll turn it over to John here.
Yeah, I thought just a project that we had done a while back now called Making Modern America, Discovering the Great Depression and New Deal. Our department is housed, or was housed when I joined, in the Center for Teaching Excellence, CTE. And so our main role was improving sort of in-class education. And this was one of the first sort of bigger websites that we worked with. So this was built by the now Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, Dean Robel. And it was a course website for a dream course that he was teaching, a really high-level undergrad course, a well-supported undergrad course, where the students got in and built this whole sort of large resource on what the Great Depression and New Deal looked like in Oklahoma. And so you can see a couple of different sections of this. There are OK guidebook tours, a built environment section. And so just streaming through this a little bit, the guidebook tours are sort of guides where they went out and did driving guides from around Oklahoma and talked about some of the different pieces that they found on these different tours. And so this is just a Neatline tool within Omeka, and the whole site is an Omeka build. And so what I liked about this project was that it's not a WordPress for the first part of it, and just because so many things are WordPress. I know Omeka is another commonly used tool, but just less so than WordPress. But the amount of work that went in here, the amount of material that they were able to gather together, and that it was all done by primarily undergraduates. And so you get just lots and lots of different resources about maps of Oklahoma, what was built around here, lots of resources about images from Oklahoma, lesson plans that the students put together and that then could be integrated into, preferably, they built them for a 9th grade history class. And so the students in this college class are building 9th grade lesson plans that then can be taken out into the K-12 environment here in Oklahoma and taught. And so just this hub, using Omeka as a hub for student work and for the instructor also, to really be able to tie together information about our environment. This is sort of community outreach here in Oklahoma, and to be able to just show sort of our history was really cool. The other thing I like about this was that it then served as a model for Dean Robel to go on and do further research. And so he's published a couple of different books about New Deal Oklahoma and the New Deal more generally. His current project is another Omeka website that we're helping with. And in this new one, I just ran some script to scrape the Library of Congress's photographs that were taken as part of the Farm Bureau project in the 1930s and 40s. And so these are photographs of farms around Oklahoma. And we scraped about 2,500 images, closer to 2,600, I think, along with the metadata on them. And so we're going to load all of those into an Omeka site. And he's then going to use that as sort of a research database to publish a new book on photography and what it can tell us about how farms are run during the New Deal and what was changing in Oklahoma during the New Deal. And so all of this is both the course project and then his own research project are just being powered by the relatively simple tool of Omeka, a normal Installatron app, but different ways that we can integrate it into both his teaching and his research and make it a full-on platform for his work for, going on, it'll be probably 10 years by the time that book comes out. And so this is a neat tool external to WordPress that I think a lot of librarians use and a lot of us in the humanities use, but that maybe people can play with a little bit more. It's not, not just WordPress of one's own, but a few other tools in here that are useful.
Well, it's brilliant, John. I mean, not only the long story of the research for your faculty member, both as a teaching tool, but then as a research tool. But, one of the things we're finding at Reclaim Hosting is a lot of the folks who are coming to us these days are located in libraries and who are dealing with archival and research tools for their faculty, whether they be something like Omeka or whether they're exploring other tools that maybe stand outside of the one-click installer. But that is just a brilliant example. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I still show the New Deal Oklahoma site when I talk about Omeka and what's possible, because I think it's a great one. And there's another great one of Omeka using for the archival stuff at Georgetown, dealing with their kind of the question about what does it mean for restitution and slavery and that kind of history. So really powerful examples. So thank you for that. What else? Keep going.
Examples that students build. We can build all sorts of great stuff, and some of the faculty have built all sorts of great stuff. But anytime that we can see what the students are actually working on and get them involved in the manufacturing of the site, the research behind the scenes, that's what tends to be a bit more exciting to me.
I think still one of the, when people talk about domain of one's own, one of the sites that still comes up, and I saw that you were looking at it earlier, was the Creaties. And like what that means for kind of like building a sense of community. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that is so magical.
Yeah, so the Creaties, we were trying to figure out a way to encourage, community involvement. We've had community sites in the past, and then starting in about 2016, we started putting together this community award. And it really, we came up with a couple of different categories that we were going to award, best student blog or portfolio. We had that at both the graduate and undergraduate level in this last year. A bunch of different finalists that we featured. Same thing with the faculty level, and we were wanting to sort of, honor both faculty and students and show their work. Course websites, and thinking through the categories of what types of sites do we want to highlight? What do we want to show people? What do we want to show that's possible? Best individual blog posts, which always are really interesting, and we get here's this one is a guide through just good yoga practice. There was one where a student took a driving tour from I guess Portland all the way over to the East Coast, and he just sort of documented that in a series of blog posts. The Solo project is a game that was built in the system, and there were a bunch of other. We think of Solo projects as just not a blog post, but some sort of thing, some sort of project that students did. Group project. World Literature Today is a fairly big sort of internationally known magazine on English literature. And they run their website here on OU Create. And so that one won an award. That one's really hard to compete with just because it's a beautiful, fantastic project. And then Latin American Literature Today, and there's now a Chinese Literature Today that have also spun off of that. And so, the awards are meant to get people together. That's why we didn't have one in 2020, was that we just couldn't physically bring people together during COVID. But it's to get all these people together in a room and just sort of talk about what they did, how they did it, and ideas moving forward to spark creativity, over the next year, and then to also have a repository of things to show people as to what's possible. And so our awards are generally 3D printed trophies. We've given out cash awards, those kinds of things. Nothing too big, but sort of can organize the whole thing for a few $1,000s just to recognize the community.
Cash is king. That's what they always say, right?
It definitely helps. We got a lot more education years where we're giving out money. But then I can also go into classes. When I go into our journalism intro class, and I mentioned that we have the Creaties, and that if you do good work in this class, that your teacher will nominate you for an award. They perk up a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it's interesting too, because one of the things we were hoping to mine in this session, and we do think of you as Bitcoin, and we are mining you. And so like one of the things that we were thinking about was like, how do folks at various schools create a sense of community around this stuff? And that's really how you show not only to us what's possible at your school, but you show to your school and your community what's possible with this platform. And one of the things, it's a kind of a mixed bag with domains, right? Because it takes people to imagine and build and create examples to make it work at its school. And I think that is that kind of the trick of it, right? It's not as kind of transactional in the same way as kind of hopefully inspirational and creative. And I think it was a really kind of good example across all three: Tim, Amanda, Caroline, John, Keegan. So for all of you to kind of come and share that work. So we do have about 5 minutes left. We're very much on time. So I was hoping just one of the topics that came up for discussion in the chat, and it's kind of worth maybe talking for a few minutes before, is, you know, how do you all manage, right? Caroline, Amanda, you spoke a little bit about how you manage Tim, John, and Keegan. Like, what is the kind of maintenance and the outreach and the general kind of running of Domain of One's Own look like at your respective schools? And, you know, how many people are involved, how much overhead, if you can put a percentage on it, how much of your daily kind of work routine is domains and not, just to give other folks a sense. John and Keegan go first, and then we'll go to Tim. He opened.
Yeah, so for the day-to-day for us is that I run the system, answer the tickets, take care of most of the day-to-day activities. And then Keegan really helps with planning on new workshops, new onboarding for both students and faculty, anybody else that's getting involved, and sort of the more creative piece of it. So I tend to think of myself as the day-to-day person. That's probably about 50% of my time. And the other 50% is working directly with people, usually on Create projects, but on digital humanities and other sort of digital projects. So just helping them create whatever it is that they're going to do. And so sometimes it's building a site, sometimes it's making a movie, you know, whatever. But probably about 50% of my time, and I don't know, 5% of Keegan's.
And that's another interesting question, John and Keegan, is, so would you consider this living within like the digital humanities kind of frame of like University of Oklahoma? Because one of the questions that came up is, are you in IT? Are you in ed tech? How would you kind of classify your group? And then who does it serve? Who do you serve?
Our office is in online learning. And so we primarily build online graduate programs. And that's the other part of my job. But yeah, our user base is often digital humanities, but then also engineering, architecture, every college across the campus. And so just working with those. I've really enjoyed working with our art school lately on a couple of showcases for them. And so my background's humanities. I have a PhD in history, and so that's where my mind usually goes. But yeah, we work with everyone, and then we also build, you know, online courses. So
Awesome. Tim?
Yeah, my unit is called Digital Learning, and Laura Taub is the Dean of Digital Learning, and then there are 3 instructional designers. But prior to sort of moving into instructional design, I was a librarian for about a decade, so I can draw on a lot of that expertise. I'm the sole sort of administrator of domains. It sits outside of our IT, but you know, they're super helpful in terms of like the single sign-on integration and those kinds of things. And the student support desk knows to refer anything with domains or WordPress in it to me, and so I support those kinds of tickets and things like that way. But as I mentioned in Discord, the real magic is, and this comes from, you know, UMW, honestly, in the DLT, the magic for us is the digital learning assistants who are paid students who have a semester-long workshop where they really get into all of the sort of core digital tools and techniques that we support on campus. The Night Lab stuff, WordPress, domains, Hypothesis, Vialogs, you name it. There's about a half a dozen or maybe 10 that we try to work through. And over time, they sort of work on more of these kinds of things. And we believe that peer learning support is really where it's at. So student consults, course-based things. If there's a sort of semester-long project that a class is working on, we might have a DLA attend and sit in and observe those classes a couple or 3 times over the course of a semester. They have drop-in hours, and they're just they're the reason why we can do what we do.
Does your school know about your pirating on DS-106 radio, that whole radio thing you're doing? Because we got to talk to someone about that.
Right. Yeah. I'll neither confirm or deny any of that.
Well, look, we're at 45 exactly. Lauren's about to shut us down. So I want to just take a moment to say thank you to everybody for joining and sharing the work you're doing with Domain of One's Own. It heartens me and does a body good to hear you all. So thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.